Hi, everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoyed this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Hey, Lei, good seeing you again this week. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, man. Good evening from my side. I am your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 85, a special World EV Day, just returned from Austin edition.
Happy World EV Day, Lei. Happy World EV Day.
Yeah. We were in Austin earlier this week for Move America.
What do you mean earlier this week? We were there today.
We were there today. So we just returned to our respective homes.
Great town, terrific event. It was smaller than some of these enormous events where you don't feel like you're able to check everything out and really get a feel for the companies, the startups, the themes. You know, you and I peeked in and out of some keynotes, peeked in and out of some panels. I got a lot out of it. And I'm very glad we decided to become media partners for this event with Move America. And I'd be happy to do it again.
Yeah, it was, I guess they had three themes: technology, business models, and sustainability. So this is the first time for me to be in Texas, let alone Austin. Enjoyed some of the cuisines there, barbecue. But I think I'm going to ask you the question on the highlights. But I think for me I think there were two probably. One was talking to the Hesai folks, the LiDAR folks, at the very beginning on Tuesday. And then the other was just talking to these two guys from Mod Bike toward the end. And then everything in between, I think there were some moments where I think some of the comments made were very interesting. So I'll recap mine. So the morning of the first day, Linda Zhang, we kind of met her again. She basically said in that fire chat that they approached this F-150 Lightning first as a truck. Maybe not so much as an EV, but
right.
First, it's got to be a truck because, right, what they've done their research, and then the EV come afterward, right? And then the other one was there was the other.
Let me add this real quick, Lei. I think Ford should be applauded for taking that much risk for the Golden Goose, right? I think Linda truly believes that was the approach they took, but you know, that's also the corporate communications team really, really leaning into that, right? Because 95% of F-150 sales goes to males between the age of 35 and 50 or something like that. And so if they leaned into the EV side of an F-150, I think they would have really, really alienated a large portion of that market segment. And so I think they did a really good job, but they should be really applauded for threading that needle because of how important the F-150 is to their existence.
Yeah. So I always, we said this before that I liken it to be the kind of the Wulin Hongguang, a popular model among really the masses, the regular folks out there. And similarly for the F-150, right? It's the Wulin Hongguang for America, kind of. So, yeah.
An $80,000 Wulin Hongguang.
Yeah.
But a Wulin Hongguang nonetheless.
Yeah. And then the other one that I attended that you didn't get to attend was Eric Bach from Lucid. It was basically a live tech talk. You know the YouTube videos that I put out every once in a while, and all he talked about was efficiency. And I think one comment was interesting he made was in the ICE age, we talk about MPGs, miles per gallons. But in the EV age, we only talk about range rather than a similar MPG, or what's known as the MPGE for EVs. So he was talking about, how they do deal with efficiency. Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. That's Lucid's approach. But I wanted to go back to Hesai because it relates to this news that they just announced yesterday that they delivered 10,000 LiDARs in September.
Right.
And I just realized they probably inadvertently revealed Li Auto's delivery numbers for the L9, right? Think of it.
Yeah.
L9, remember the other news is they just produced their 10,000th L9. So this is, I believe their first was produced August 18th, if I remember correctly. So it's 6-7 weeks.
Yep.
So I'm kind of doing the math here, and really their AT128, I mean, they have a lot of design wins, but really it's the L9.
Now you're talking Hesai again.
Yeah,
right?
Hesai,
the
right.
AT128.
So really the L9 is the model that really has the AT128 in any significant volume. So hopefully, because Li Auto has been preaching this, has been bragging about it actually, that they will do 10,000 L9s in September. So we'll see whether that's Hesai's number is an indication.
It'll be Chabadul, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And it also reveals that Hesai currently has effectively one commercial customer, and that's Li Auto.
Well, they have other ones. They have the Hi-Fi's, Lotus, Electra, but those are not produced yet, right?
Well, and that goes back to what was it Billy said? There's these announcements by these other LiDAR manufacturers that hasn't actually gone into manufacturing yet. And so Hesai has made several announcements with new customers, like you had just mentioned, Lotus, Hi-Fi, several others, but only Li Auto is going on vehicles and being produced
right
in scale, right? So,
and also if we extrapolate a little bit, so they did 10,000 production yesterday. So there's obviously going to be a few days of lead time to be delivered. So which means they probably will not get to the 10K deliveries.
Right. And that's a timing thing, right?
So somewhere between, let's say, 9,000 to 10K. That's what we would expect.
And the one thing I will say is that, because you and I are so familiar with these Chinese companies, whether they're EV companies or tier 1 level, tier 2, tier 1 level suppliers. But then when we talk to the Western folks, it kind of reminded me of the Sandy Monroe at the charity preview. When we first start talking to them, they're like, who are you guys? Right. And then we just we don't name drop, but we basically know what we're talking about. And then all of a sudden they just open up like they literally want to hear everything we have to say, right? So I think that's pretty funny. But, that's part of our job, is to really educate the West that, there are people paying attention. They're starting more and more, right? Because our audience is growing. So, and, one of the things I'm sure that we're going to talk about is that battery company that's potentially going to open a factory in Michigan. So we're going to be even more relevant in the coming months, right?
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but the other observation I made for Move America was all of a sudden, I guess, these mushrooming of these charging or charger operators or innovators or whatever you want to call them, headed by this BP Pulse, which had that, I found out later that they had that event that we saw with the Polestar 2, right, with their logos on the car. They just announced this new branding, which is basically the BP's electrification and charging brand, based on an acquisition of this Ampli, which was responsible to build up the charging for Hertz initially. So they will continue to do this for Hertz. I think it's like 100,000 chargers over the next how many years. So it's an interesting play that they're not working with anyone else, but that Hertz is,
Since you brought Hertz up, if we take 2 steps back, let me take 2 steps back. We're seeing green shoots. We're seeing kind of random green shoots. We're not seeing a consistent across the board growth, but anecdotally in Austin, 2 of the cars that I got into were Teslas that were being rented by the week.
Right. I was in one of them. Right. We were in one of them. Right. It was brand new. Right.
Effectively, the numbers that they were saying, they rent it between $500 and $700 a week, and they make between 12 and 1,800 US dollars a week. So they make pretty good money being an Uber driver when they're renting the Tesla. So Hertz has something, it seems,
Yeah, that's the Hertz and Uber's agreement with, putting on these Model 3s, right?
Yeah.
So, and, but the thing is, like these, like we saw the 3P Pulse, there was this flow, right? You saw that, right? There was a switch, I think a company from Canada.
Yep.
You kind of feel the buzz, or you can feel that they're stoked. I think partially because of the infrastructure bill, because of the IRA. I think.
Oh, there's a mad dash for money. It's like San Francisco in the gold rush, right?
Yeah, I think that's how we felt, that you can see this push right in front of your eyes. And it was not, right? It was a mobility. It was a business model. But the thing is, it was hard to differentiate really what they offered that are unique, right? That they're just, is it software? Is it something else? I couldn't tell. I mean, there's quite a few of these charging.
And that's the thing, right? Because are they just manufacturing the infrastructure and then having a third party manage the stations, and manage the service, manage the user experience? That's what's really disparate, because payments is a separate thing. The UX is a separate thing. And a lot of these companies that you've just mentioned, they're just manufacturers, right? They're just manufacturing and selling chargers. And, on the back end, they get access to the data, but they're not responsible for the user experience. And so if you add a layer on top of that as a provider, a charging infrastructure provider, and you're using multiple manufacturers, the UX can get really sloppy, especially if you don't have a seamless payment system. And so that is still really, really the big challenge, I feel, because anecdotally, we talk to people, or you still read about frustrations about going to chargers and either them being broken, parked,
I was speaking to one of the guys at the BP Pulse booth, and I kind of told him, when I rented the Model 3 on the Hertz, it was seamless. It was smooth. And, he nodded and said, yeah, they're the gold standard. And can they offer the same thing? I doubt it. But it looks like it's going to be initially responsible for Hertz build out the charging network for Hertz customers. So it's kind of like, B2B almost.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else you found interesting or highlights?
So I'm still on my tour of people I've spoken with a number of times. And now you've also had the pleasure of meeting Maggie and Roberto. So, really enjoy their enthusiasm and appreciate their enthusiasm and their brilliance, because, I think, so we're referring to a startup called Drive, and they do driver monitoring. And so one moment that stuck out to me was talking to the city of Culver City yeah. representative and, how he really needs to have a compelling argument to implement or integrate new technology into the city planning infrastructure so that in order to save lives. And I really appreciated that he was leaning into technology as an enabler to create a better atmosphere for his city. But his plight was that Culver City is one of the smaller cities in LA County. And he just told us that the Culver City just wasn't that influential when it came to the city of LA County and the changes. So he was inviting startups to explain how their technology could help the city. And I thought that was, I was super interested, engaged in that conversation because it was so random and organic, because it was literally the last panel discussion or the presentation of the second day. And after the presentation was over, we started hearing forklifts.
Yeah.
Because the conference was closing. But then we were sitting in that breakout room where the presentation was, still talking about it for 15, 20 minutes, right? And the other thing was how this conference wasn't focused on cars.
No.
I think that kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, it was innovative business models, startups. There were a lot of startups with these, right? Drive being one of them with this, very small, what do you call it? A table with the backboard, right?
Yeah.
Only one person standing next to it to man the kind of the table. 1 or 2 persons. I mean, right? You kind of feel the startup mentality and the atmosphere.
To my surprise, you knew 1 or 2 of them. I'd not heard of most of them. So
yeah, the pre-act guys, it was interesting as well. They're trying to probably compete with the bigger tier ones, or could be a tier 2 supplier to the tier ones.
Yeah, and upon reflection, you and we noticed there is a lot of these events all over the country over the next several months.
Yes, and actually another surprising thing was that, right, one of the guys we talked to, Mod Bikes, a local e-bike startup, he was like all long on Chinese brands, BYD, he's like, they're going to be number 2 behind Tesla. I mean, like sometimes the people, the knowledge that they know what they know about. I mean, he came up to me and he's like, who's number 1 in China? Who's number 2? Who's number 3? And I told him, like, good thing that I knew. It's like, CEO, you're a China EV somewhere, you should know. Yeah, I mean, right? And it wasn't. Sometimes, like, I spoke to a journalist from Caixin in China, and there's a lot of feel that there's a lot of hostility toward the Chinese brands. I'm sure there are, but right, when you talk to these people, they're very open, which makes you,
Lei, I just think that that's a ginned up thing for politicians to really rally their bases a little bit, right? I think there are valid concerns, and there should be certain commodities or certain services we should proceed with caution on. But, by and large, if the legacy automakers aren't bringing the right products at the right price that give us the features that we want, then why wouldn't we open it up to other countries and other brands and other automakers? It just doesn't make sense, because we as Americans, we deserve it, right? We deserve the best product we can afford. And if that happens to be Chinese, if that happens to be Japanese, so be it. But that's what the United States is built on, competition, right? And so I'm of 2 minds on that, because, and you and I have several private conversations every week about certain things, right? And I think we have similar sensibilities. We might be looking at it from a different viewpoint, but I think our sensibilities are very similar. And, because the irony of it a lot of times is that, in my opinion, the Chinese government points fingers at countries when they do the exact same thing, right? So
yeah, what I was slightly surprised was when you speak of these Chinese brands, that the people that I talk to, they actually know them. It's not like, oh, who are they? They know them. So right, so it's the awareness is there.
And to be quite frank, the two Hesai guys were white American guys. So they
Well,
weren't Chinese. They weren't Chinese guys, right?
they're probably, influenced by David, right? The founder and
Yeah.
CEO. So they know. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that they didn't send a team of people from China to sell to Americans, right? They hired Americans.
Yeah, local. Yeah.
So I think that's what you want.
Yeah, and which is a good segue to go into the BYD and NIO. Both of them are doing some things in Europe. BYD announcing the three models at a very high, I would say, surprisingly high pricing points for the three models. And Willem Lee doing this, he's tripping, man. He's doing this trip, 10-day, 10-city European trip, and he's having fun with Li Hong and meeting all these locally hired, right, the user advisory board people, the managers, the people doing the operations.
We're going to look back on this as their coming out party, NIO's coming out party.
Every day he's posting these things on the NIO app, and he has to post twice, one in Chinese and one in English on different apps. And you see him saying, I'm becoming a we media.
Well, it might not be him. It might not. Not actually be him.
Yeah, but there's right, but there's he does these trips and meetings, and right, somebody's got to sum up, what he does.
Yeah,
and you kind of see this European layout being presented right in front of you, right? So where he is, who he met, where there's a NIO house, the first swap station in Germany, right? All these things.
And I think an important distinction, Lei, is that it is him. It is not the head of international for NIO leading that charge.
It's
it is
founders.
Him out front. Yeah, it is them out front. And this goes to show how important this foreign market, this European market is to NIO.
Yeah.
In order for Li Bin to achieve the goals that he set for NIO in his mind and his heart, he needs this market to succeed, right? It's a validation, but it's also a risk that he's willing to take because of the confidence he has in his team's ability to create and design and engineer a product that not only Chinese customers will resonates with Chinese customers, but will resonate with German or European customers. And I agree with you. BYD at 75,000 euro. Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, because we have a chance to kind of compare how the brands are being presented, what are the CEOs doing, and certainly BYD is not at the level. Well, anyhow, it's not at the level of NIO as in terms of brand positioning. So 72,000 euros, which is pretty much the same as dollars, right?
Yeah, right now, and pounds.
Yeah, I think I did some calculations, was roughly 50% above the pricing. Tang, for example, Tang EV, 50% higher. In I think the pricing are for Germany, and it could be different in other countries, European countries. But you wonder, can BYD, hold that kind of positioning, and also whether that's deliberate. And I think it is. And you said it is, right?
It is, but there's premium, which would have been probably like a 60,000 euro price point, and then there's like anytime you're hitting close to 75,000 US dollars, that's hitting for the fences, swinging for the fences, right? And it's a stretch for me to think that someone would pay 75,000 euro or 72,000 euro for a Tang, right? So,
well, anyways, I will have a chance to go to the Paris Motor Show, so I will certainly talk to BYD and kind of hear what the local, the Europeans think, and when they actually officially, I guess, launch, next month. So
I do know this, Lei, and let's jump back to NEO for a second. There is no shortage of Western and European media
Oh,
outlets
okay.
that want to talk with Bin Li and Qin Li Hong, right?
Yeah.
They, I know they've been interviewed by the FT, Peter
Peter Campbell,
Campbell.
yep.
I know The Economist has reached out to them. So they're getting exactly what they want. The media coverage, and most of it has been positive. Now, a lot of it revolves around, can swap stations work in Europe, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that misses the point, but I'll answer that question. I believe because of the nature of the number of transactions that need to happen at a swap station in order for that to become cash flow positive, I think Europe in general makes it much more challenging for swapping stations to be, and I'm saying swapping stations broadly as a general term.
Yeah, but one highlight I think William showed was him holding up an NFC card next to one of the chargers, and it looks like it's supposed to work on like, was it 380,000 or 38,000? Probably 38,000 chargers in Europe, supposedly. So I mean,
Right.
he's on top of the game as far as thinking the user experience, right? Before the cars are even on sale.
But think about this, Lei. So if you're a charging infrastructure guy and all you've had to work with up till now is a legacy automaker who doesn't want to bend and doesn't want to compromise and doesn't want to work together through partnerships. For NEO to come to Europe, it has to be refreshing to talk to them and say, yes, we want to work with you. We want to, allow our ET5s and ET7s to plug into your network, right? Because the legacies, I guarantee you, they're just very frigid and rigid with what they want and only what they want, right? And so I just think that that's the other part of where the legacies are falling down, right? They need to be more reasonable and take more risk with some of these startups or some of these lesser known commodities, whether it's a technology, whether it's a service. And, what Mujib said, and maybe it's too little too late, but Mujib said to us last week resonates with me still to this day. He said, before IRA, all the OEMs were just coming around kicking the tires, seeing what our tech was all about. But now they're coming back saying, let's work together, right? Let's figure this out. So maybe that is the catalyst. Maybe the IRA is definitely the catalyst. What outcomes, whether it's too late, we'll see. So,
and the other, really, the number that stood out for me was William revealed they have 720 plus people working in Europe already, and most of them joined the company within the last half year, 6 months. So think about that.
And they've also, and I forget that gentleman's name, but he wrote EV newsletter. They hired him as an evangelist.
Yeah, Alfonso, right?
Yeah, Alfonso, that's right. Yep. So, good for him, because he seems very passionate about the space. So,
and the other thing is just how William revealed in his kind of journals the selection of these NEO house locations. It's also a very deliberate process, and who the partners are, how large it is, whether it's a house or a space. And there's this I think 110-year-old 7-story building, the whole building in Amsterdam, 2,700 square meters, that's going to be used as a NEO house. I'm wondering this whole 10-day, 10-city, all these NEO houses unveiled, how the investment involved.
Right?
Right?
We talked about that, right? We talked about that. They're breaking the bank for sure.
Which I want to bring up because we want to talk about the two IPOs, Porsche and Leap Motor. And one of the reasons why Porsche was flat, but Leap Motor was 1/3 off the IPO pricing was because, well, for Leap Motor at least, that these companies are still losing significant amount of money, right? Part of the reason, and maybe the other reason was today the kind of the U.S. stock market was.
But this is the retail consumer not really getting the automotive space, right? I think they're expecting technology kind of returns, right? But at the end of the day, Leap Motor makes its money, it generates its revenue by selling cars, right?
Yeah,
that's it.
I think they raised $800 million, and they were expecting twice that. I think, right?
And unfortunately, I have not finished my newsletter. I'll be sending that out later this evening.
Double duty.
Yeah, but I'll give you guys a sneak peek. I think that Leap Motor should be applauded because when the C01 launched over 3 or 4 years ago,
the
S01, sorry,
the coupe,
which was a undersized, underpowered, crappy little coupe.
January 3rd, 2019 in Beijing at the, I was there at the Water Cube.
I knew you knew that date.
Because I remember that day very clearly how it was underwhelming because of the coupe. It was like, what?
And they struggled for the better part of 18 months, right?
Yeah.
And I saw one of them and I was like, wow, first of all, it's almost as small as a Wuling Hongguang Mini. EV.
You mean the T03?
No, the S01.
S01,
It's small.
Okay.
It's tiny. Yeah, it's tiny. In images, you want it to be bigger, and then you see it, and you're like, wow. Not only is it a coupe, but it's underpowered and it's small. And coupes don't sell in China, generally speaking, unless you're the brand name ends with Orsha. Right? So coupes don't sell. Two-doors don't sell that well. And so why they started with a two-door, but then they got a cash injection, I think several cash injections. And then they started hitting some singles and some doubles with 2-3 of their new products. And so I applaud them because I left them for dead. And to get to IPO, to me, is quite an accomplishment, regardless of how it played out during the first day of trading. So,
and by the way,
kudos to them.
Yeah,
kudos to
so
them.
They're Hong Kong listed. So 2 other companies, I think, Calb, the battery company, and even I think WM Motor is still trying to IPO. Like, right, WM Motor is way earlier than. I mean, they're
one of the OGs.
Yeah, their potential was right. It was much better than Leap Motor, but now
I think both you and I 3 years ago thought that they were going to be one of the leaders.
Yeah.
So 4 years ago, not 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
And it was interesting in that launch event. I watched a little bit of it, and they had this long interview with the Zhu Jiangming, the guy who started the company, who's also the chairman of Dahua, like one of the leading surveillance camera providers in the world. They're based in Hangzhou. So they've accumulated these kind of ADAS perception technology, and now they're using a lot of in-house tech and hardware.
But that's the thing to me that is gonna really follow them around in a negative way. So,
and also the pricing was quite aggressive as well. I think it was gunning for the P7, let's say X1 P7, a 5 meter around 200,000 RMB with all those the C2C, the CTC cell to chassis, the first model claiming to use that technology, facial AI ID recognition. All these are from their Dahua foundation. So
I just don't know how successful they're going to be in the Western countries. I could see them possibly gaining traction in certain Southeast Asian countries eventually. But yeah.
Oh, we said last time that Neta, I think, opened a showroom in Bangkok.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Because what Chinese EV companies are trying to do is disrupt the domination that the Japanese car companies have in Thailand, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, right? Like if you've ever been, and I'm talking to the audience here, if you've ever been to the Philippines or Thailand, all you see is Toyotas,
yes,
and Hondas, right? Like, and so, but Toyota's, Honda, they're coming late to the party when it comes to moving their powertrains over. So.
Yeah. So speaking of the Japanese, I had tweeted that list of models that were either launched or went on pre-sale the week since we last talked last Thursday, and there's roughly, it wasn't exhaustive. I think there's roughly like 20 models, and roughly half of those were EVs, which are really what we're talking about here on this show. And one of them was the Dongfeng Nissan Ariya.
Yeah.
And what I see is their pricing was very aggressive. So the high 200,000 RMBs to the low 300,000 RMBs. That's what I see on the Chinese chatter. And they're saying that I think this is really the how you decide the decision on pricing. The chatter was that this is probably done by the Japanese, that they had this authority on the pricing because they were comparing this to, let's say, an ID4. So that type of sized SUV.
So this is what's going to happen. Like the sub 400,000 RMB crossover sedan, small SUV, even midsize SUV, they're going to do battle in China, and only the best of the best. And it's going to be brutal. And only the best of the best in those few segments, sedan, small SUV, crossover, midsize SUV, under 400,000, are going to make it out to Europe. They're going to make it out to the United States, and they're going to do well because they have earned their stripes in the China market.
Yeah. So the locally produced Ariya is just the next model in line among the foreign brands that are likely going to hit, I don't want to say a wall, but you wonder, right, how well can it do?
There's some headwinds for all the foreign automakers.
Yeah, I think,
right, so
Volkswagen adding all their ID models together is okay. But other than that, who among the ones that have launched in China that have gotten any significant volumes? Nobody, except Tesla, of course.
And remember, this is the theme here is there are so many disparate things going on. COVID is still an issue because our friend,
Shenzhen,
friend of so our friend Ile tweeted, and he's always accurate. He's pretty much always accurate in my experience. And so he said that there are some breakouts and our outbreaks in Shenzhen, and then friend of the show, Anders Hovey, I'll reply to Anders after I get off this podcast, but he was surprised that I said 6.5 million in my LinkedIn post, but I think we can just print that. I think that's pretty solid number to get to 6.5 million units in China. And so if we think about it, if you'd have told me that we're at 6.5 million units and Tesla is not running at full capacity plus overtime, and NIO is still struggling to get to 10,000 units, Li Auto is struggling to get to 10,000 units, I might not believe you, right? Because these guys should be growing like crazy. And so somebody's making up for that. And it's these other domestics that you and I talk about that aren't in the headlines in most Western media outlets, right?
Yeah. And the other ones on that list, really, if you look at the list, we talk about EVs, and really each of those EVs has their own unique, whether it's positioning, whether the kind of the talk that they announced. Let's say, right, the Rising Auto R7 is the next kind of this premium position, the EVs to be battery swappable, right? They have this new joint venture set up with SAIC and the two big oil giants that we talked about last episode on this joint venture swapping entity, right?
Right.
The GAC Ion Y Plus is kind of the OG for the GAC Ion brand, and I guess one of the sales guys was saying, "Oh, this is going to be a 20,000 a month model." Right, the Hongguang Mini EV Cabrio, 99,900 RMB, but they're only selling this on a limited edition, like 100 or 200 a month.
Right.
Right, these are the unique. And then the Leap motor, the CO1 is, we've already talked about it. The Haval H6, it's hard to believe the Haval H6 PHEV is the first ever NEV for the Haval brand.
I had to double take on that. I was like, I couldn't think of any, but I was like, man, there has to be one, right?
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. It is the first.
And our good friend Ash from Geely posted some RD6, the first production job one, right? And then 180,000 starting price point for 350 kilometer. So
I'm a bit perplexed with the radar because it was announced only recently, so it didn't really get a chance to build that much excitement before it started delivering. So, is that a missed opportunity because it's such a unique vehicle? I don't know, but Geely is trying to be as they're just churning out product left and right across a number of brands, right? The Polestar 3 is going to be
in a couple of weeks
unveiled, yeah. And a reminder to everyone, the Polestar 3 will be built in both China and the US. In the US, it's announced pricing of around $80,000 and directly competing against the Cayenne. So,
which goes back to that BYD two models selling for 72,000 in Europe.
Yes.
Which would you choose if they were right?
And this is the crazy thing because Polestar isn't doing that well in China, let's be frank, right? But I don't think most Chinese consumers would think BYD when they're shopping Polestar. So BYD is counting on the European consumer to be able to do that, reconcile that, okay?
And then one model I missed on that list, interestingly, Toyota is in the news again because I just tweeted that Akio Toyoda is in Las Vegas talking to reporters. And he was in that stretch Toyota,
yes.
What do you call that?
TRD, that's racing something.
Yeah, it's a stretch pickup limo.
Yeah, it was strange. 有点奇怪.
Yeah, so Toyota Mirai, they just announced in China, they're going to be selling 50 units as kind of a trial through the GAC Toyota channel by the end of the year.
And the Mirai is the hydrogen vehicle.
Yeah, and they're selling for 750,000 RMB a model. So this is one side of it. The other is that they're going to put 111 of these Mirais that were operating in the Winter Olympics into ride-hailing fleets in a few cities in China, just kind of, to pilot on a pilot basis.
That's music to the Chinese government's ears.
So you think the Toyota Mirai is expensive, but get this: the Chang'an Shenlan, the SL03, they have a hydrogen edition, and guess how much that one cost? 699,900 RMB.
Oh,
so which would you choose, right? So the Mirai is only 50,000 RMB more expensive. Which do you trust, right? So
yeah. 50,000 RMB is around $8,000. So
we're seeing this wave of products. I think one of the obvious reasons is we're in this golden September, silver October time of the year where I think these companies are trying to, before tomorrow or the day after starts the October National Day holidays. So these companies are
so not only that, Lei, the October holiday, and then on the 16th is that very important day, right?
Yeah.
So October is going to be such an important month for the country. We're not even talking EVs. We're talking the country. And
unprecedented, right?
Yeah, because we talked about this offline. There are a lot of rumors going on right now that are pretty much unfounded that when you speak to your folks on the ground in Beijing, Shanghai, other cities in China, I speak to my friends, nothing seems to be changing, at least on the ground there. So these rumors are pretty much just rumors. But ultimately, the October 16th date is, if people are wondering, it's when Xi Jinping is supposed to get his third term as president of China. So, and after October holiday, we're going to see a mad dash again for sales.
Yeah. And so I think these companies are just simply trying to push for exposure. And that's why you saw so many models launched the last few days. It's right before this holiday break that everybody wants to push.
And I'm glad you said that, because
seasonality of it.
Because Wang Chuanfu, Li Shufu, they couldn't buy the type of publicity that Li Bin is getting with his tour of Europe.
Yeah, the way he does it. I mean,
every picture you see him in, he's smiling. He doesn't have a care in the world, and it is like, it would be so uncomfortable to see
that happening in China.
Yeah, well, but I can't think of any other Chinese CEO besides maybe Lei Jun.
Lei Jun or Xiaopeng or Li Xiang.
Well, maybe, but Li Bin fits it to a T, right? He seems very comfortable on social, okay?
And he's got a good sidekick in Li Hong, where the other ones don't have this type of kind of the brotherly, what you call it, right?
I really do think they complement each other. They do.
Because I think Li Hong, he speaks very good English, whereas William might be slightly worse. But I mean, they have a team, obviously. But yeah.
This is where you and I are kind of kicking ourselves, because we should be, if we were in China currently, we would be getting test drives of the G9. We'd be getting test drives of the L8. We would be getting test drives of a few different cars, maybe that Radar RD6. I'm sure we'd get, but unfortunately we are not there. But we do have some friends that I'd consider partners. I think Mark's very good at doing those reviews and things like that. So there are people, Elliot, of course, from Fully Charged. So
yeah, so we're saving the best for last. So the L8 launches today, and then the ET5 starts deliveries. Right, people have been waiting. So the last day, right, the last day of the third quarter,
right,
and then by Saturday we'll see those wave of those bar charts, right,
and then 10 days of calm before an enormous storm towards the end of 2022.
In the China EV space, there's no breaks. Every day there's stories, there's news.
Hey, so there were a lot of people posting about BYD's pricing in Europe. And it sounds like you and I think that it's a touch heavy. And the silver lining, I thought, was, so my read was BYD seems very confident in their product. It's probably also a reflection of the lack of competition that they really see. And they don't have the baggage of those crappy cars from 20 years ago that were sold here in China under the BYD nameplate in Europe. And so, but the one thing they cannot do specifically at that price point is have those types of mistakes that they made specifically in launching the Atto in Australia with the warranty. That will just be, the European won't forgive that. They cannot make those. So let's hope that the partners that they are working with, and I say that with an S because the partner in Germany is probably only good for Germany. The partner in France is probably only good for France. Because remember, these are separate countries, separate languages, separate cultures. And so there's not going to be one service partner. There's not going to be one retail partner. There's going to be several. And that's where therein lies the rub for challenges, right? And so NIO is going to have that same issue, right? But I don't believe BYD has 700 employees in Europe right now to help with that. Right?
Well, they do have the bus side of it, which is a huge operations, right? So yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about, Lei, was a quick update on that Goshen. They still have not confirmed, but the Mencosta County, which is Western Michigan, they have offered substantial tax breaks for Goshen over 10 years to incentivize them to build a factory there. I had a brief conversation with our good friend Steve Levine. He wanted to talk to me about kind of the Michigan aspect of it. And so he might be writing a little bit about that in his newsletter this week, The Electric. I think he reached out to some folks and there's a bunch of no comments. And so I think that's a reflection of how sensitive it still is and how, because it's not signed in a done deal, that they're not willing to jeopardize the potential transaction at such a critical juncture. So
too, before I get off, I'm just reading this now. Tesla is going to reduce prices of the Model 3 and Y by as much as 40,000 RMB. Remember, this is the October 1st holiday, the National Day holiday. Tesla has done this before.
They just undercut every single EV brand in China, pretty much.
Yeah, they're unconfirmed, but I'm seeing this Hu Xiu reporting. And the Model Y rear-wheel drive starting price is going to fall down to 270,000 to 290,000.
Lei, what did we say last summer? We said this exact thing, didn't we? We said there's going to be softness in demand, and Tesla is. Oh my God, this is so predictable. And
as high as 40,000. This is being reported. So I think you're going to see Twitter blow up on this.
Oh my God! Oh, Taylor's going to have a field day.
No, I mean, well, how you look at it, right? Yeah, but this is also going to affect, how, let's say, Xpeng G9 pricing, these type of things, how these other competitors price their vehicles. That's the other effect, right?
Lei, it's going to affect Tesla customers who bought 3 months ago. Their residual values, right? So
it's both good and the bad, certainly.
Like clockwork, right? You knew this was going to happen because, and is this going to get them to the 93% capacity? Because I still hold my theory out that Berlin Giga is slow ramp because Shanghai Giga is not running at capacity. So it was so predictable, but we told you so, right?
Yeah, this Hu Qiu article posted at around 8:30 p.m. Now it's already close to 100,000 views.
You know that if this is true, foot traffic in Tesla stores is going to be massive during October holiday. Massive. And I wonder if that means that week lead time for all models is going to get pushed out now. And just so one piece of feedback that I got, Lei, that we should be both better about is translating RMB into dollars, because sometimes we just talk in RMB.
Yeah. So 40,000 reduction would be like a $6,000 reduction, right? Yeah.
It would be more than that, right? Like it's almost $7,000. And so this isn't like a $1,200 reduction. This is like game changer reduction where they're probably getting close to cost on some of the models, right? So, wow, they're freaking, all the pricing teams that all these Chinese EV companies are looking at this and saying, because the G9, the ES7, all these, the L8, the ET5, I'm not that concerned about the ET5 and the pricing on the ET5, but the rest of these guys, they're like, we just launched this car. We can't reduce the price on this.
Yeah, the L8 is announcing the pricing in a few hours.
they're changing it right now.
They must be thinking about it, at least.
They're sharpening their pencil right now. Or there's going to be some back-end incentive, right? You order today, you order the next 30 days, you're going to get free this or that, right? It's going to be a non-pricing based incentive so that they don't mess with the pricing too much. So anyways, hey, Lei, always enlightening, always educational. And everyone, thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Thank you all. Same here. And we'll talk to you next week.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.